50 billion rand stimulus package for South Africa. This as our ailing economy enters into a recession for the first time since the global financial crisis of 10 years ago. It will come as welcome relief to many hard-pressed South Africans, but what are the deliverables and are there any timelines to measure its performance? The devil, as you know, is in the details. He joins us now for this one-on-one interview with the SABC. Mr. President, thank you for talking to us and thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
In your announcement for this South Africa Infrastructure Fund, you say it's largely to deal with problems that arise out of global factors, not of our own making. And yet if you look at the specific things you've raised, from municipalities to the visa problem, those are in fact our own goals.
Well, and quite a lot of what we are going through now, the increased petrol prices and increased prices generally, have to do with the broader global economic situation. But we do also say that there are certain things that are given rise to by what we are not doing or not doing perfectly. For instance, investors have raised the issue of policy certainty and consistency. Now that is entirely within our realm. That is something that we need to address. Issues such as visas, because tourists want to come to South Africa. They are not able to come in their large numbers because of our visa regime. Issues of the spectrum. We should have resolved this a long time ago. We haven't. The mining charter is another one. So investors are saying, for as long as you are not able to resolve these issues, we are not really able to invest, including local investors, because they say policy keeps changing every month, every quarter, and we are not sure what we should be investing in. But you're absolutely right. There are other issues that impact on us, like dysfunctionality at municipal level. The level of dysfunctionality in our municipalities, where there are service delivery challenges, give rise also to investors not being too keen to invest in our areas, because in the end, any investor who invests, the money does not float in the air. It finally finds its location in a municipal administered area. And when they find that there are protests, there's no water, there's no sanitation, they hold back and say this is not the best place to invest. So those are the issues that we have to address ourselves.
So what would your assurance be then, Mr. President, to those investors when just this week Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene tells us that many municipal managers and CFOs in municipalities are not competent for the jobs and positions they occupy?
Well, we're now taking action. The Minister of Cooperative Government and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Mkhize, has been given a task to address specifically those issues. We've identified the fact of skills mismatch at municipal level, where people who are not well au fait with finances are CFOs. People who've never managed anything are municipal managers. We are now moving to recalibrate that, to get people who are well qualified for positions to be put in the right positions. But at the same time, we're looking at how best our municipalities can function better. Many of our municipalities are functioning under really challenging situations because they don't even have a revenue base. They are located in places where there's no business, where people are poor, and where people are not able to pay their rates and taxes. Government has to step in to respond to that. So it's a combination of a number of challenges. But the good thing is we've identified what the causes of these areas of dysfunctionalities are. And we are now going to zero into them and address them. As it is now, we've identified 57 municipalities which we are going to treat as priority pilot sites, where we are going to move in, do sanitation, do refuse removal, electrification, water delivery, and even roads. So we are now ready, almost shovel ready. And the broad fund that we have now established is going to help also to manage the funding challenges that we have had in those areas. And the good thing with that fund is that we're going to be able to bring in other investors, other participants who are going to help bolster this fund. So it's going to be a mega fund, but all implementation will still remain at the local and municipal level. National will now be coming in to give more support and more assistance.
You've spoken about problems in health and education, particularly the issue of sanitation, which you've raised before. I mean, is there a part of you that looks back on the last 24 years and looks at the problem of children who die in pit latrines as an absolute stain on the democratic government?
Yes, we have a huge stain. And it is in this regard that we ought to drop our heads in shame. Because in 24 years of democracy, to still have young children who we should be looking after as a nation because they are the future, dying in pit latrines in the way that they are, is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. And the need is so huge. And this is where we need to be channeling the resources that we have. And it's not like we don't have the resources. The resources are there. They need to be properly managed. They need to be properly applied. And these are resources that should not find their way in the end in the pockets of people. They should find their ways in improving the lives of our people.
So what's your response then, given the framework of, concepts like Batubili, given the idea of a responsive government, when those funds do not find their way to addressing the needs of citizens, but rather are involved in all kinds of shenanigans, particularly at the local government level?
Well, those things have been happening. We want them to be events or malfeasance of the past. That now we are on a new trajectory. We're now going to proceed forward in a much more determined way that is aimed at, in a demonstrable way and in a real way, improving the lives of our people. And not just talk about it, because we've often been talking about inequality, poverty. We now need to fold our sleeves and direct money where it should go and get the jobs done. And if we can do that, everybody will then find their own space of improving their lives, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a government official, whether you're a beneficiary. There is enough for everybody to be able to benefit, rather than for some just taking everything and hiving off with it. So this is the environment that we want to create. And this is the new approach that we want to craft for our country going forward, so that we are driven by solidarity, being in solidarity with those who are living under difficult conditions, who are poor, and also having compassion, the compassion that should make all of us feel that we should advance the interests of our people and not our own sectional interests.
You've also mentioned the allocation of spectrum. It's a long-standing issue that would deal with, among others, the cost of data in South Africa. It certainly would be a game changer for the local telecoms industry. What specifics can you give, also in the context, of course, of the delay in digital migration?
Well, digital migration we're working on. We want to speed that process up. But the allocation of spectrum has taken quite a long time. There's also been a number of court cases. But there's also been a rather South African type meaningful consultation process with industry, with a number of role players. And I think we have now arrived at the type of architecture that will work, because industry has been consulted and there will be good space for the key players in the industry to play. But there will also be space for the new players, those who were previously prevented from playing in this space. We're opening up that space, and the licensing conditions are now going to be issued. I know that ICASA is busy with that, and the minister is going to clean up everything else so that we press the button and go ahead with this. So that decision has been taken. We are moving ahead.
You're talking about the reprioritising of spending. Does that suggest then that in typical form we're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul? And are we likely to borrow more, and could we reach our borrowing ceiling?
Well, we are at our borrowing ceiling. We can't really borrow more because our debt costs are just far too high, and they've been rising much more than any level of expenditure. So we've got to be prudent and curb that. And it's almost like in a household, when you know that you cannot go and borrow, you then try and make do by sacrificing that, postponing that, and cutting this, and to make sure that indeed what is a key objective at the time does happen. So in our case, we've had to prioritize. We're not necessarily going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're going to be looking at areas where we need greater emphasis. It's often possible that departments, when they budget, they have nice projects, but the other urgent projects is what we want them to focus on. And others can be slightly postponed. And there are also cases where there is, lack of spending, where they finally return money back to the fiscus. And we say, let us reallocate that money within the budgetary process that you have.
But in the long run, all of these numbers add up, Mr. President. 50 billion rand is a lot of money. It's also very close to our revenue collection shortfalls. So all these billions add up. Where will the money come from?
Well, we're going to be reprioritizing, as I'm saying. There are pockets of areas where we're going to get the money. And the minister, in his statement in October, medium-term budget statement, he will be able to outline all that. So the details will be outlined, they will get to be known. But right now, we are ready with a number of projects. At the municipal level, those projects are ready, and there are quite a number of other interesting things that we are now going to start to do.
Politically, I have to ask you, the governing party does seem beset by a number of problems, and it now appears some of those divisions are playing themselves out in the public arena. Plots, clandestine meetings reported where there are attempts to remove you. I mean, have you spoken unequivocally about your response to those reports?
Well, my task as president of the ANC is to implement the mandate I was given. The mandate I was given by the conference is to unite the ANC, to renew the ANC. And I'm sticking to that mandate because it's a noble mandate. It's the best mandate that we can have as a political organization. And I'm just, not getting disturbed by all these other things that are written about or said. I'm just focusing on that. And I'm saying all we should all be doing is to focus more on reducing poverty in our country and making sure that we give the people of South Africa a better life.
But surely it will raise questions when, for example, something as simple as a statement by the Reserve Bank, we see the governing party issuing and withdrawing statements. There is this sense that the left hand may not necessarily know what the right is doing.
That was most unfortunate, and it's now been corrected because a very junior official issued a statement. The ANC has dealt with that, and that will not happen again because we want the ANC to speak with many voices on one message. There must be one message, and we must all be able to articulate a similar message so as not to cause confusion.
Cosatu says the alliance needs a reconfiguration. They've put your party on notice saying that they will no longer tolerate what they're calling big brother politics. They want more consultation, whether it's deployments, whether it's policy. Your response?
COSATU and indeed the South African Communist Party and SANCO, they know that the door is open. They know that the willingness to consult, the willingness to work together, the willingness to do things together is there. And we are just really renewing it and strengthening it. So the ANC see consultation and working together as par for the course. It's normal for us, and we want to deepen our relationship in the alliance. So I have no doubt whatsoever the relations between the ANC and other alliance partners is going to get better and better, because that's the way it should be.
You're jetting off to the UN for the largest gathering of world leaders. What's your message to the international community, particularly as concerns have been raised about our land reform program, and any plans to meet with your US counterpart?
Well, it's going to be a meeting of world leaders, and all leaders will be there, will be able to meet and shake hands and greet each other. So whomsoever will be there to shake hands with us will be able to do so. We have no difficulty with that. Whether it's President Trump, President whoever, we will do so. Our message on land reform is fairly straightforward. What we are involved in is a process of correcting what was done wrong in the past. And we want the world to understand that we have been able to deal with a horrible, horrible policy of racism and apartheid in our country, and we found solutions. And similarly on this one, we are going to find our own homemade solutions. And all we would say to them is that leave us to deal with our own challenges and problems. You supported us very well in the past to bring an end to the nightmare of apartheid. Right now, we are on our feet. We've got all the policy positions enshrined in our constitution that will enable us to resolve this problem, and we are going to resolve it. And it's going to be resolved in terms of our constitution. We're going to resolve it in the interest of all the people of South Africa, because many South Africans, if not all, want all of us to accede to a better life as articulated in the Freedom Charter, so that the wealth in our country can be shared by all. So if we embrace that, then the land question becomes an easy one.
Finally, Mr. President, the consistent criticism of your style of leadership is that, of course, you're a skillful politician, but that also you're a crowd pleaser, that you say the right things to the right people, but there isn't always a consistency in that messaging. What's your response to that?
Well, I am consistent on an ANC message. I'm president of the ANC, and I articulate ANC policy. And once government has come out with a clear policy, I articulate that, and that's the way we go. And I'm fairly clear, even on the land issue, exactly what needs to be done.
So you're not just a crowd pleaser?
No, not at all.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us here at the SABC.
Thank you. Thank you very much.